All right, this is Marty Wilson. I'm sitting in Grace Park with Doris Dunkelberger. It's the 20th of December, 5 days before Christmas, 2024. And her daughter, Linda Reed Miller, is in the room with us. And Doris, let's start with where and when you were born.
Okay. I was born October 29th, 1923. And on the farm that sits off of 611, and the ShopRite store and mall is there now. Our house was set in a little, well, we were about a quarter mile from the road from 611, and that's when 611 was 2 lane, not 3.
And just for those people who might be slow with math, so you're 101 years old.
Yes.
Amazing.
I am.
Yeah, good for you.
And I was raised on the farm, and my job, everybody has a job when you're on a farm, and mine was to take care of the chickens, feed them, gather the eggs. So that was just fine until springtime, when the hens decided they'd like to hatch, and they got real spunky, and I had quite a time once in a while to try and reach under them and get the eggs.
They gave you a hard time, the chickens.
Yeah.
How old were you when you started doing that?
Oh my goodness. I think I was probably before my teen, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old. And as I said, when you live on a farm, there's always something to do. So that was my job.
I'm sorry, I forgot the cardinal rule about turning off our phones. So you were 8 or 9, and that was your job, taking care of the
that
chickens.
was
Who were your parents?
my parents was Walter Hoyer and Esther Hoyer, and my mother was very active in politics. In fact, she ran for county treasurer, and I can't even remember how old I was. I was in my teens, I guess, or later. And she ran against Myron, like, I forget what his name was that won. But anyway, she gave him a good race. And she had rheumatic fever, and she died at an early age of 45.
Your mother died at 45? Mm-hmm. Did you have brothers and sisters?
I have a brother. I had a brother, Frank, and he is also deceased. He died a couple years ago. And he sort of, he would, when it was time to make hay, I usually had a job, and that was after they put the hay up in the mow. I had to go up and tromp it down, which made me real happy because there was an offset and I could jump off and get in the hay. And well, we all, at this time of year, we always had to butcher, and we put the hams we down to cure and canned tenderloin, and we were sort of self-sufficient in eating, because we raised a lot of our own vegetables, and my father did the barn work. My mother was inside working in the house. But I also had a job when the cows ate their meal. They had what they called chop, or a ground up meal, and they would hang their head over the trough and the food would be out here. So I had a great big broom, bigger than myself, and I had to go along and sweep their chop so that they could eat. So I always was busy doing something. As I said, there's always something to do when you live on a farm.
How big was that farm? Do you remember how many acres it was originally?
It was 100 acres.
And it was a working farm. That's
It
how
was a working farm, and he had a delivery. He peddled milk. He had a milk route. He milked the cows, bottled the milk, and sold the milk. When they used to order milk delivered, I don't know if you probably didn't even know that they delivered milk. We delivered, in fact, I delivered milk until I even was in high school. We had a regular customers that we would serve, and they would put out, if they wanted something different than what they usually got, they had a little note in a bottle, and you went in, and it was fun at the beginning, but then toward the end, as I grew older, I used to think, oh, I am so deep, I'm not privileged like those ones that are in town, because I can play and have fun, and here I am on the farm working, doing chores and things like that. So, but right now I am so happy that I had to do that, because it taught me how to work and grow up, and was a good life.
What was a typical day like? What time did you get up in the morning?
Well, that depended. At first, the very first bus route was my parents. They had a bus route that was on 209, and then also one that was on 611. So
when you say a bus route?
A bus route, school bus route.
They drove school bus.
They drove school bus beside doing the farming. And I can remember, I just thought the other day when I see the snow, one time, whenever the cars got, the trucks and the buses couldn't get down the lane, they just got the tractor and pulled it out. So, we really...
So how did that work? They had a bus route, but they had to deliver milk?
Yes, that's true. We got up early, delivered milk, and my mother drove bus, and we had hired help. We had a girl that helped in the house, and then we had also a hired man. So between everybody, they drove the two buses.
So they must have gotten up early in the morning.
Early in the morning, I remember whether it was 4 or 5 o'clock, you had to get up, and it was sometimes according to what time it was in the year, you got up and it was dark, but
so I imagine they got up and they had to feed the animals.
Had to feed the animals, milk the cows. They milked all the cows. He had about 30 to 40 head of cattle.
And are you awake at this point, or are you still sleeping?
No, I'm still sleeping until about, maybe 5, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. No later than 7, because I had to have my breakfast, and whenever we left on the milk route about, I think about 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. I know so many times I had a certain time you had to be in school at 9 o'clock, and sometimes I ran a little late. You had to go down to the office, and they had to write a slip. You had to get a slip because I could enter school. And I don't know how many times did that. When he'd see me coming down the hall, he'd just automatically write the slip for me.
How many customers did you have that you delivered milk to? Do you remember? Maybe roughly.
Oh dear, I really couldn't tell you. It took several hours.
And was it the milk that they had gotten that morning that they were delivering?
Well, they milk at night and in the morning.
Okay.
But they bottled the milk that they had at night and had to get it ready for in the morning, iced it down, and it was all ready for them in the morning. And then you just repeated that. Even on Sunday, you didn't have a day off. So.
What school did you go to?
I went to, my first grade was in a school called Loaders on Chipperfield Drive, and that was located, a house is there now. As you go up the hill on Chipperfield Drive, the first hill, it's about halfway up the hill, the school was, and then we had a playground, and
So you'd get up in the morning and you would, your parents were already awake and they've already been working for
They've already milked the cows. And
so you would help deliver the milk and then you would go to school. Did
then
you walk to school or did you?
No, I didn't. Well, I can't remember. I guess before my brother could drive, and he was a couple years older than I was, he would drive, and we had a couple cars. We'd take one of the cars to school, and that was at high school. That wasn't it.
Okay, so what high school was it?
Stroudsburg.
Which is where it is now, same location?
Just where it is now.
Didn't it start off on the hill? Or
What?
What about the fire on the hill? Were you going to that?
Oh yes. When I was, I think, my 12th birthday, my mother was having a party for me. And just as I was having the guests come, they did the bottling and the sterilizing and all that was by coal and by fire, hot fire. And lo and behold, a spark hit the house that housed the working man and the garage and the fire company. Well, we had an awful time trying to coax Stroudsburg to come that far for a fire. But anyway, my mother was downtown getting my birthday cake, and the guests were coming, and a man said to her, "Why aren't you home? Your house is on fire." And it was a bad thing to say because she had a heart condition. I never will forget that. It was so cool. The fire trucks were coming, the house was burning. It wasn't the house I lived in.
Right.
It was the house above it, but boy, it was scary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you had cows, did you have other animals?
We had horses that helped do the farming. We had 4 horses.
Excuse me a second, I gotta figure out how to turn
And,
off my phone.
We had chickens and we had ducks and we had just everything a farm would have. We had lots and lots of mouths to feed.
And did your dad grow crops as well, or was it?
Yes, he grew his own crops. He grew the corn and filled the silos with the ensilage, I guess it's called, the chopped corn, and that was a regular routine when it was time to cut the corn and cut the corn stalks, and they brought them in, and they had a machine that you fed, and the corn stalks would be blown up in the mow or in the container where in the silo.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another job I had. Whenever they filled the silo or started filling silo, I could go in there and climb up a ladder and go in and stomp down the ensilage so that they would be able to put more in. So that was a fun time for me and my brother. But
Did many of your friends come over and help or play? Or
no, not at that age. They didn't, because actually we all had jobs and we were busy. We didn't have company too much. We on Sunday once in a while, it was our Sunday treat was to go for a ride in a car, and we had friends up in Bushkill. We often went up to Bushkill on a Sunday, but we'd always have to be home at a certain time to milk the cows. So it was a very strict ritual, really. You didn't play around to say, I'll take today off or anything.
Yeah.
Which is
Well, you know, today the mall where that house was,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like part of Stroudsburg. But when you were living there, it must have felt like you were out in the country.
It was. Where, let's see, the place that they eat, the regular eating place along the road, that was a cornfield, and let me see.
I think you're talking about Texas Roadhouse and
Yeah,
Burger King.
yeah. And also down the road, let me see, it would be almost where the Acme store would be. We had fields of corn and wheat and whatever, oats, and so actually planted everything.
You said you had some help, hired help, because I'm thinking that's an awful lot of work for one family.
We did. You worked hard and long on a farm. You did.
Was 611 paved at that point?
Yes, but it was just two lanes. Two lanes. Yep.
All right. Well, you were born in 23, so 33. You know, I'm thinking of the depression in the 1930s.
You know, I never knew there was even a depression.
You never knew there was one.
No. We had the food on the table, and of course we the hired hands always they had to cook for them, and the table was a great big table with two end leaves, and everybody sat around the table. When you were a hired man, you were as welcome as if you were an uncle or an aunt. So.
What year did you graduate from high school? Would it have been 1940?
1941.
41.
Mm-hmm.
So Pearl Harbor, and how did that affect you? Did your brother enlist?
No, my brother was deferred because he helped on the farm. That was his job. He was part of the farm, so.
Did it have any impact on you, the war? Did you pay attention to the war? Did you listen to the news, read the news?
Not too much. As I got older, I did. I remember when Franklin Roosevelt died. It was during his term that I remember a lot that he was elected for the third time, which was so unusual, and it was something they had to change, and so he could take the office and be president. It was really, that was something I never forgot.
So the 45, I'm trying to do the math in my head, you were probably 22
they
years old.
bombed in 41, didn't they?
I'm sorry?
Wasn't the bombing in 41?
Pearl Harbor was
Pearl
41,
Harbor.
right. Do you remember where you were, by the way, when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I lived down, my in-laws had a funeral home. It was Dunkelberger Funeral Home, and I was living there at the time, and I heard the news, and my husband was a mailman, and of course he worked all kind of hours, and
that was after the war.
Yeah, after the war. I'm trying to, the things that...
Dad was in the service from 42, 43 to 46?
Yes, something like that, yes. He came back in 1946, because I will never forget that, because she was born in December, he came home in February. So, we really didn't lose any time. Yeah.
So we missed some steps in your life, which I'd like to go back and revisit. You graduated from high school, Stroudsburg, yes. And then what did you do? Did you just stay on the farm?
And I worked at the Bell Telephone for a while. I did. I left the farm and the house and went to work. I just, when you would see when you lived on the farm and that was your life, and you saw the outside life, and they would play and do everything that you thought you ought to do, that I just wanted to get out and do my own thing.
Yeah. Did your brother stay on the farm?
My brother stayed on the farm until we didn't have it anymore. Yeah.
So you didn't have the farm?
We didn't have the farm. In fact, he bought another farm out in Cherry Valley near Camp Den. I don't know if you've ever heard of Camp Den or not.
No.
It's he moved out there, and of course I was on my own because I was working. And
so you're working at Bell Telephone, and eventually you meet your future husband.
Actually, I met. We were high school sweethearts, and I went with him for a couple years, and then I thought, maybe variety would be good, so I wasn't with him for a couple years, but when my mother died, he came to the house and never left.
What was his name?
Ray.
Ray?
Dunkelberger.
Mm-hmm. So your maiden name was?
Oyer. O-Y-E-R.
Okay.
Was Oyer Scary. I'm sorry I don't have a milk cap or a milk bottle to show you.
Wow.
But
I'll have to look for them at yard sales now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be it.
So you graduate from high school,
mm-hmm.
You get married, age of 20, 21, something like that?
Yes,
yeah.
I did.
And then was your husband drafted into
Yes,
this?
he was in the service, and he was over in Germany, and when the war was over, they shipped him back, and I thought he'd be coming home, and they shipped him over to the Pacific. So he was both places.
He was getting ready for the invasion of Japan, I assume.
Yep.
How often did you see your husband during the war?
Well, would you believe you're too young, and I'm glad my children don't do that. But I went out to Colorado. He was stationed out in Colorado. I went out to see him. And then he was shipped down to Louisiana, and I went down to Louisiana to see him. And there we got married, and I got engaged out in Denver, but then I went down to Louisiana, and we got married in Louisiana, and that was in the chapel at the soldiers. I went right on the base with him to see when they did not the lunch, but the dinner. I got to see whatever it was like to be a soldier. But that was quite an experience.
So then he comes back after the war.
He comes back after the war.
You're still working at Bell Telephone?
I'm still working at Bell Telephone.
Did you work at Bell Telephone for a long time after that?
Well, not too long, no, because that one came along, and that kept me busy. And then a year ago, when she was in the hospital, when she was born, Ray came to see me, and he was time for on going home. They used to wear a bracelet. I don't know if they still do or not. And I wanted the little bracelet and he asked the nurse, well, that would be $1. Oh, he said, $1. He says, that's cheap. I'll be back next year. And sure enough, he was back a year and a week later. Oh. But
so then now at this point he's a postman, is that right?
yes,
He
worked.
Delivering mail or
Yeah.
work? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And you were living where at that point?
Oh, I was kind of all over.
No,
I was over.
we were up at the house on the hill, I think.
Well,
by then.
yeah, before I would live, yeah, I was up on the house where, I don't know, we don't have a picture of it, do we? I lived up there, and, well, I lived up there until a long time.
There's a house, as
Yeah.
I said, if you're at ShopRite on the far side, you look up, there's a house. Well, there's another home behind that.
Oh, okay.
And that's where we started out.
Gotcha.
Myself and my brother. Then my sister came along, so we moved down to the bigger home that you now can see.
Okay.
I'll never forget. I put her in a baby carriage and wheeled her down just like that. And we just, thank goodness my father was the owner and the landlord, so he just told him that we were exchanging houses because it was just a little bungalow where we were, and I needed, needless to say, I needed more room.
Do you remember anything about going into Stroudsburg? Some people have told us that Friday night was the big night in Stroudsburg.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little
well,
bit?
Saturday night too used to be a big night. Before Friday, it used to be Saturday night. People would park their cars about 5 o'clock on Main Street and wait until later on. People would be shopping and watch the people. That was their entertainment.
Oh, yeah. So there was a lot of activity on Main Street.
Yes, like Main Street was the place to be.
Yeah.
I was the Friday night walker, my era.
Oh,
yeah. But I didn't know it started on Saturday and then shifted to
I
Friday.
didn't either.
Yeah, how about that?
It was always Saturday night. That's what you did. And you were lucky to get a parking place, believe me.
Yeah.
Because lots and lots of people just took their car and parked it on Main Street, and that was their entertainment. Well, of course they did their shopping, but nevertheless they had no place to go.
So I'm curious about what happened to the farm. I mean, your mom died. Did your dad keep the farm?
My father bought another farm out in Cherry Valley, and moved out there. And
Your brother, you say?
no, my
And
father.
Your father? Oh,
Her
he moved out.
Her father essentially bought the Ice Stone Farm, it is called, in Cherry Valley.
Okay.
It's in that gully there. As you come down from Boswardsville,
Yeah.
it's a big yellow barn there.
Uh-huh.
That was my grandfather's second farm. The
Yeah.
first farm essentially
Yeah.
was owned by Mom's mother's family, right?
Yes, my grandmother owned the farm. It was willed to her, and we rented that farm after when he moved. Started farming.
But what happened to the farm was, I'm guessing that developers wanted to use that land, and so they offered you.
Exactly. A big developer came in bought the whole 100.
But it wasn't in our family's name.
No,
Oh, it wasn't.
no. It was that's why my father bought the farm in Cherry Valley and moved out there, because the circumstances, my grandmother moved into the farm, and they were in Monroe, so so he moved out in Cherry Valley and farmed that. I'm surprised. Well, are you native from around here?
I've lived around here a long time. I hesitate to call myself a native.
Uh-huh. Well, as I said, it's the Camp Dent farm. The man that owned the farm originally lived in Allentown, and he was ready to sell. My father just bought that and continued farming.
How long did your dad farm? How long did he?
Oh dear.
Till he died?
Yes.
About
Just
90.
about.
I think he died when he was 92 or so.
Yeah, he wasn't.
And he was still farming.
Early 90s.
Still had a cow.
He still had a cow, milked, and had his own milk, and did some gardening and a little bit, what you could do when you're in the 90s.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yep.
you lived a pretty interesting life. What other stories can you tell us about your life as an adult?
Oh, I don't know. I can't think of anything right offhand.
Your bank experience.
Oh yes, I worked at the bank.
Which bank?
First Eastern used to be First Eastern, the one with the town clock.
Yeah.
I worked there, and I worked there for I forget how many years, and I ended up being a trust officer, and was in that position for a couple years. And I don't know if you realize what a trust officer does or not, but you get into a lot of families and you run their business for them or their life, more or less, and it just got too much, and
It sounds like there was a lot of responsibility
it
with
was
a job like
a lot
that.
of responsibility.
Yeah.
You had to take care of some people were in nursing homes. You paid their bills and seen that they had food, and it was a job.
Without revealing any details, can you remember some of the names of the families you helped?
Boy, it's been a lot of water under the dam.
Sure, yeah.
So
Yeah, well
right
done.
offhand, I can't think of.
That's fine.
We did have Mrs. Kresge, S.S. Kresge. We had her account and serviced her account, which was a big account,
Yeah, I would guess.
and that was quite interesting. She was a different person too.
How do you mean?
Well, she had lots of money, and she never mingled very much. But I can't think of. And Josephine Lahamadou, you ever hear of that
I've
name?
heard the name, yeah.
Yes, had her account. We had some very interesting people.
Did you know
And-
Casey Drake?
I sure did. Casey was my boss for a while.
Yeah.
Did you know Casey?
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah,
Oh,
well, I'm from Water Gap, and he lived
yeah.
down there. Yeah, we were
Boy,
friends.
he was one peach of a fellow.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. Yep. He would always be your friend and say hello and do whatever you wanted
Yeah.
him to do. He was a wonderful person.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then you worked at the bank, and eventually there's responsibilities started to weigh on your shoulders. And
Yeah, well, and I started when Ray came home from the service. My family started, and it was just, I just had too much to do, so I paid attention.
She was a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
And you had 3 children.
I had 3 children.
Yeah.
And I had the 3 children like zip, 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 zip.
So they kept you busy.
They kept me busy.
I remember too, Mom, you worked in the cafeteria up at
Oh, I
Clearview.
did. So to get a little extra money, I worked at the cafeteria at the school with the lunch program. And that worked out fine because I was home when the children got out of school, and this gave me a little extra money when all the, you know, when you have a family, you need the, so
Sure.
I've always worked, and I always thought when I was young and the other teenagers were doing their thing, I used to think, wow, why do I have to do this? And now I look back and I think how wonderful it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You lived in Monroe County during a period of enormous change.
yes,
Can you talk about what things changed the most in your view?
well, a lot of people started coming, and a lot of houses were built. And 611 got to be a very busy road. It wasn't a nice road anymore to be on. It was just too busy because all the developments came along with it, and the grocery stores, and well, just got really busy. And you wouldn't even think of, well, walking up the road. And I can remember, especially on Memorial Day, I used to have sell poppies, and I'd walk up 611 to the houses and sell the poppies. I mean, the road was okay, you know, you had to be careful, but it wasn't all that bad then. But now it's like a
There are a lot more people now.
yes.
And Route 80 had something to do with that.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Do you remember when Route 80 opened? Do you have any feelings about Route 80 opening?
No, it really didn't affect me. In fact, it helped. It took it to traffic off of the road to some extent, but not a lot. You know, people that were maybe going to Scranton or someplace, they could get on the throughway and
Well, I've read about how traffic from the city would come through Delaware Water Gap, up over Foxtown Hill, and then into 7th Street, Main Street, and there would be constant traffic jams.
they would be lined all the way up Foxtown Hill. Just a solid stream. And from where I lived, there would be a solid stream of traffic going in
Going the other
Stroudsburg.
way, yeah.
So it was a traffic jam no matter where you were.
So Route 80 helped.
Yes, it did. It really did.
Yeah.
Took a lot of it took some people off of 611, but not enough.
Well,
I
progress.
could interject a few things.
Sure.
When the coal trucks would come down Foxtown Hill, there's that sharp corner.
Mm-hmm.
About once a year, a coal truck would dump over on that corner,
Didn't make the corner.
right? And they'd do that. They'd also go down Broad Street, and my grandparents had the funeral home there. I don't know how we got away with it, but we'd sit up there on the big porch with a gun and pretend to shoot people. You can't do that now.
Well, we've been told stories of students carrying their rifles to school.
I did.
Yes.
I did. I was on the rifle team.
Wow.
Took it on the bus and everything.
Different times. Different
Can
times.
you imagine doing that
Can you
now?
imagine? Yeah.
Oh, people would be horrified.
we'd see all these New Yorkers coming by, we'd wave, and then we'd pretend that we were cowboys and Indians.
You'd get arrested for that today.
Oh my Lord. I wouldn't even think about it.
Well, you've lived a full and pretty interesting life.
Yes, I did.
What is there something I should have asked you about that I didn't ask you about? And you know what always happens, as soon as we turn this stuff off, people start having...
Mother has a story about skipping school.
Oh dear.
You skipped school.
I told you that my brother used to drive the car, and we used to work until it's time to go to school. So we had to have transportation. So he drove the car. Well, it was a 4-door car, if I remember rightly. And when we drove to school, a lot of the kids at noontime would be come and climb in the back of the car and talk and so forth.
Smoke cigarettes.
And one day, one of them said, "Well, let's skip school." And my brother, who was a daredevil, he said, "Okay, let's skip school." He said, they said, "Let's skip school." So he starts the car, and I didn't. And we kept on going and going and going, and we went down to Easton and went to the movies.
Did your parents ever find out about it?
Well, we never got home until about 5 o'clock. And my mother was very ill at that time. So they, I don't know if my father ever knew or not, but we just pretended that we were. I don't think they ever knew that we skipped school. But I can even remember the movie, and it was that Gunga Din. It was back here some time ago. It was a...
You're a better man than I, Gunga Din, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you remember that movie?
Yeah, I do remember that movie.
You? Oh,
yeah.
for heaven's sake. That's the movie we saw.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy.
She tried to be a goody two-shoes, but there was a little, rough water under her.
Yeah. Well,
More rough water under my uncle's feet, but...
Yeah, there was more of a... He worked hard on the farm, and he drove the tractors. He could take a tractor apart and put it back together again. Later on in life, he sold tractors.
So did your husband retire as a postman?
Yes,
Yeah.
he did retire. And I forget how many years. Do you remember?
I want to say close 39 or 40. Does that
guess
sound right?
There. Yep.
And of course my brother opened a store, and Mom was a bookkeeper there for a while.
Yeah.
Helped my brother at the store. My father helped my brother at the store.
Now, are we talking about Dunkelberger?
Yes.
That is correct.
That's
Yeah.
it.
That was your brother.
That's my brother who started
son
it.
opened-
My son.
Opened up Dunkelberger.
Yep.
Wow.
He opened a store on 6th Street that used to be, I forget his name.
Emerson McNichol?
Yeah, Emerson McNichol's store. I don't know if you ever heard that name or not.
No.
But it was a little tiny store.
And then Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer owned it.
Yeah. He just grew bigger and bigger and now he has 2 stores, one in Broadersville and one in Stroudsburg.
Huh.
So,
Who's running it now? A member of the family? A son of his, or?
Mm-mm.
he
It's
is.
Jerry and his daughter, I would say. Trisha's there, his oldest.
Okay.
He goes
And her
back
husband.
and forth to the 2 stores.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Jerry, yes, still has his hand in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it. I think he'd be getting tired by now, but I guess
Well-
he's kind of chip off the old block.
Yeah. Well, here's here's a question I often ask people at the end of the interview. What's the thing in your life that you think is you're most proud of, or the thing that you feel was your best accomplishment?
That I became a trust officer at the bank.
That's a big deal.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
I could see that.
yep. You don't. I went to school for that. I forgot to tell you that. Went to press school for a session
That was out of Bucknell.
and yeah,
There.
University.
A couple of times.
Yep. I forgot that part.
Well, you were working and then you'd go to school. They'd send you out there.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question for you. You grew up in a period, and you did too to some degree, where women were considered to be somewhat less capable than men. I mean, you didn't see female presidents of banks. Did that, I mean, it must have affected you, but were you aware of it at the time? Was it something
No, that came late, a little bit later.
That was even after me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Women have just been able to do anything now. And I think that, I said my mother ran for county treasurer. And that would be unheard of that back then, of a woman trying to take a job like that.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting. Well, that was a fascinating story. Do you have anything else you want to tell us? Any other questions I should have asked you?
I can't think of anything.
Linda, do you remember anything else?
Oh, I remember the circuses coming to Stroud Township, the Stroud Township Fire Company having their carnivals there. There used to be a big red Penn Stroud billboard that my sister and I would walk down to and sit on and point our fingers to it.
Point your fingers to it.
Yeah, we would just sit there and, like we were advertising. But it was something to do because we'd just walk down the hill and through the field.
Oh, I forgot about that. I never forget one time I went to go down the hill when we lived up there on the hill, and down at the bottom of the hill was an elephant, and they had the elephant harnessed, and he was pulling the ropes to set up the tent, and it was coming up my driveway.
How about that?
So that was something else.
Well, I think we've covered it. That was fascinating. Thanks very much. I think we'll end it at that point. All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.